You're kidding, right? That's the mighty human fleet we're supposed to fear. First Admiral Kazo's secondary breathing sacs fluttered with derisive amusement as he gestured toward the tactical display with one of his smaller appendages. I've seen more threatening vapor trails in the Omega sector. Terra, a young Vurian intelligence officer, kept her composure despite her superior's scornful attitude. Her crystalline exoskeleton flickered with worried shades of violet as she double-checked the sensor data. Sir, I strongly advise you to take a closer look at the energy signatures. These readings are highly unusual. Unusual? Kazo scoffed, his primary eyes performing a dramatic role while his secondary pair remained fixed on the display. The entire fleet wouldn't even fill one of our maintenance hangars. What's their plan? Dull our hull plating with their quaint little shuttles? The massive bridge of the Vurian flagship Eternal Dominion buzzed with low murmurs of amusement from the crew. On the holographic display, the human flotilla appeared laughably small against the backdrop of the Orion Nebula. To the seasoned Vurian officers, they resembled nothing more than escape pods drifting aimlessly in space. Sir, Terra pressed, her voice gaining a sharper edge that finally made Kazo pause. These vessels are employing spatial compression technology. Their apparent size does not match their actual mass. Preposterous, Kazo snapped, though a flicker of doubt crept into his voice. No species has managed to master spatial compression on this scale. The energy requirements alone, the tactical officer's sudden, sharp intake of breath silenced the bridge. Admiral, the human ships, they're unfolding. All eyes snapped to the display, which flickered as it struggled to process the unfolding spectacle. What had appeared to be a collection of modest vessels began to expand, shift, and transform. Small ships bloomed into enormous war platforms, sections of their hulls uncoiling like deadly flowers into arrays of weaponry kilometers long. Hangar bays emerged from seemingly non-existent dimensions, unleashing swarms of fighters stored in spatial pockets that defied conventional understanding. By the first egg, Kazo breathed, all four eyes now wide with disbelief. They've weaponized topology itself. Not exactly, a new voice interrupted, crackling through the comms in a maddeningly casual human tone. It's more like we got really good at space origami. You should see what we can do with a paper crane. The energy readings on the tactical display spiked to incomprehensible levels, making Kazo's exoskeleton tingle uncomfortably. Each human ship had expanded its mass and volume by factors that shouldn't have been possible outside of theoretical physics. What had seemed like a pitifully small fleet now dwarfed the Vurian armada in both size and firepower. Kazo sank deeper into his command chair, his confidence crumbling as he watched the impossible geometries continue to unfold. What had begun as a comedy was rapidly transforming into a nightmare. A vessel that had initially appeared no larger than a standard shuttle now revealed itself as a massive carrier, its hull unfolding endlessly as though performing some cosmic sleight of hand. This is impossible, a Vurian science officer muttered, frantically analyzing the sensor data. They're somehow stabilizing Einstein-Rosen bridges inside their hull structures. The power required for this should, oh that, came the voice of Captain Drake, laden with what the Varians would later recognize as the uniquely human emotion of smugness. Turns out the universe doesn't care much for your ideas of impossible. We got tired of building bigger ships, so we started making small ones that could be big when needed. Saves a ton on docking fees. The Vurian bridge crew stared in stunned silence as the human fleet continued its surreal transformation. Ships that had seemed laughably insignificant now occupied the tactical display with enough firepower to make even the most seasoned strategists reconsider their life choices. Drake's voice returned, dripping with infuriating nonchalance. Now, about those colonies you've been messing with. We've got two options here. Option 1, the hard way. I explained to my bosses why I had to unfold the really interesting parts of my ship. Option 2, the easy way. You turn your fleet around, leave the sector, and pretend you've never heard of it. Kazo's secondary breathing sacs were no longer wheezing with amusement. In fact, they had all but seized up as he struggled to process the unfolding nightmare before him. His tactical display now showed human ships deploying weapon systems from seemingly non-existent dimensions, energy readings that defied known physics, and enough firepower to obliterate his fleet several times over. Kazo stammered, fighting to maintain his composure. Perhaps it would be wise to discuss terms for a peaceful resolution. Brilliant idea, Drake replied, his tone practically oozing cheerful satisfaction. I love diplomacy. That said, my first officer is really rooting for the hard way. There's a pool going in engineering about whether we can fold a dreadnought into a proper four-dimensional shape, and honestly, I'm curious too. Kazo glanced at the tactical display again, where yet another human vessel twisted spacetime into a geometric impossibility bristling with weaponry. He thought about his long and decorated military career, his numerous victories, and the reputation for strategic brilliance he had worked so hard to cultivate. Then he imagined explaining to the Vurian High Command how he'd lost an entire fleet to a species that treated the fabric of the universe like origami paper. "We accept your terms for peaceful resolution," Kazo declared, his voice as steady as he could manage, despite his exoskeleton flushing an unmistakable hue of defeat purple. "Excellent choice," Drake replied, his voice practically bubbling with delight. "Though I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed," Captain Alexander Drake said with a mock sigh. "Do you know how long it took us to figure out how to fold a particle cannon into 11 dimensions? The paperwork alone nearly killed us." As the Vurian fleet retreated in disgrace, First Admiral Kazo couldn't help but overhear one of his junior officers muttering under their breath, a remark that would soon become legendary across the galaxy. No wonder humans don't build bigger ships. They were too busy figuring out how to tell geometry to go F itself. Strict radio silence marked the Vurian withdrawal, broken only once by an unauthorized transmission from an overenthusiastic maintenance technician. "Wait until the hive mind hears about this. They're going to be furious they didn't think of it first." Back aboard the Mobius, Captain Drake leaned back in her command chair, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Navigation, once the Varians are out of the sector, plot a course back to Starbase 47. And someone remind Dr. Patel in engineering that she owes me 20 credits. I told her we could send them running without even unfolding the quantum origami arrays." Her first officer, Commander James Martinez, glanced up from his station with a grin. "You think they bought the bit about the 11-dimensional particle cannon? Does it matter?" Drake replied with a shrug. "By this time tomorrow, half the galaxy will be trying to figure out how we did it, and the other half will be too scared to try us. Let them waste their resources chasing phantoms." "But, Captain," the young tactical officer interjected hesitantly, "wasn't that kind of deceptive?" Drake's smile turned sly. "Ensign, the first rule of human military strategy. If you can't actually build the impossible, make everyone else believe you already have." "And the second rule?" the ensign asked. "Never let on that your secret superweapon is really just a clever light show and some very creative storytelling," Drake replied. She paused, her grin widening. "Though, credit where it's due, Dr. Patel's work with holographic field projections is incredible. Did you catch how many of them started molting when we unfolded the third wave?" As the Mobius and its decidedly ordinary fleet of non-space folding ships headed back to Starbase 47, word of their encounter with the Varians was already spreading through subspace channels. By the time they docked, 3 species had submitted peace treaties, 2 had requested joint research agreements, and 1 had decided to abandon space exploration entirely. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the labyrinth of Earth Federation bureaucracy, a very confused requisitions officer was puzzling over 17 urgent requests for funding into applied space origami. Martinez reviewed the incoming communications with a bemused expression. "You realize they'll figure it out eventually, right?" "Maybe," Drake conceded, settling more comfortably into her chair. "But by the time they do, they'll be so busy worrying about what else we might have cooked up that they won't risk calling our bluff." "Besides," Drake said with a wry smile, "sometimes the best weapon isn't the one you have. It's the one everyone thinks you have." "And the quantum origami arrays?" Martinez asked, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, those are completely real," Drake replied with a perfectly straight face. "They're just folded so well right now that even we can't find them." The bridge erupted in laughter, but it was short-lived. An incoming priority message from Earth Command interrupted the moment. Drake opened it, revealing a single line of text. "Excellent work. By the way, request denied for additional funding for 11-dimensional particle cannon research." "Nice try though," Drake sighed, already making a mental note to inform Dr. Patel that they'd need a more convincing name for their next funding proposal. Perhaps something simple and suitably vague, like recursive space-time manipulation studies. After all, the real genius of being human wasn't just coming up with impossible ideas, it was convincing everyone else that they were plausible, at least long enough to sow doubt. Meanwhile, somewhere in the galaxy, a Varaxi admiral was having a very difficult time justifying his actions to his superiors. Despite sensor logs showing that the human fleet he had retreated from was entirely ordinary, no one believed him. Instead, they were too busy trying to figure out how humans had managed to fold space. "With all due respect, High Strategist," chittered the Hive Mind's representative nervously, "are you absolutely certain of this analysis?" High Strategist Zixa of the Greater Collective studied the quantum-encrypted data packet once more, their 6 primary sensor clusters pulsing with barely suppressed excitement. "The Vurian sensor logs do not lie, Representative Kret. The humans have somehow mastered dimensional manipulation on a scale previously deemed impossible. And if we cannot replicate it, we must steal it, Kret concluded, their antenna twitching in agreement. But surely, the humans would protect such technology with unprecedented security measures. That's the beauty of it. Zix's bioluminescent patches flickered with amusement. Our agents report that the humans have concealed their most advanced research in the most inconspicuous location imaginable, a facility they call Community College. Wait, someone tried to break into where? Captain Alexandra Drake nearly choked on her coffee as Commander Martinez briefed her. The Advanced Papercraft Studio at the MO Community College, Martinez repeated, struggling to keep a straight face. Apparently, they were convinced it was a front for our supposed space origami research division. Drake set her mug down carefully, closed her eyes, and counted to 10 in Standard. Then, for good measure, she counted to 20 in Vurian. Please tell me you're joking. I wish I were, Martinez said with a sigh. The would-be infiltrators were caught attempting to enroll in Introduction to Origami with obviously fake credentials. The instructor got suspicious when one of them insisted that folding a paper crane was vital to galactic security. So let me get this straight. Drake pinched the bridge of her nose in exasperation. After our little bluff with the Varians, which, might I add, has officially been labeled the origami incident in diplomatic briefings, someone genuinely believed we were hiding revolutionary space folding technology in a community college art class? To be fair, Martinez offered with a shrug, it is the kind of thing we'd do if we were actually trying to hide something important. Before Drake could respond, her C-panel chimed with an urgent message from Earth Command. She scanned the text, her eyebrows inching higher with every line. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, sir, Martinez prompted. Drake reread the message, half convinced she was suffering from space madness. Command wants us to, she hesitated, reading it again, leak information suggesting the community college incident was a successful counterintelligence operation to protect our actual research facilities. Martinez blinked. So, they want us to convince everyone that we tricked someone into stealing fake secrets to protect our real fake secrets? Welcome to multidimensional chess, Commander. Or, in this case, multidimensional origami. Drake stood, adjusting her uniform with a wry smile. Get the senior staff together. If we're gonna bluff an entire galaxy, we're gonna do it right. 3 days later, aboard the Hive Mind's flagship, Silent Whisper. The humans are clearly toying with us, High Strategist Zixa declared to their gathered intelligence analysts. The so-called community college infiltration was obviously a ploy. They wanted us to think their secrets were hidden there, but strategist, one analyst ventured cautiously, if we know they wanted us to think that, and they know we know, then logically, their real secrets must be hidden somewhere even more obvious. Zix's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with determination. Exactly. Expand our search to all human institutions related to folding libraries, elementary schools, senior centers. Leave no paper trail unchecked. In the back of the room, a junior analyst leaned over to a colleague and whispered, "Is it just me, or is this starting to sound ridiculous?" Meanwhile, aboard the Mobius, in the main conference room, the good news, Lieutenant Commander Patel began, is that 17 different species now believe we've mastered advanced folding technology. The bad news is that 3 of them are actively trying to replicate it. How is that bad news? Drake asked. Because, Patel explained, pulling up a holographic display, they're actually making progress. The Arcturians have already managed to fold a shuttle into 9-dimensional space. It exploded spectacularly, but the fact that they even got that far is concerning. So, let me get this straight, Martinez interjected. We convinced our rivals to develop an impossible technology, and now they're starting to succeed? Exactly, Patel confirmed. Drake stared at the technical diagrams on the display for a long moment before bursting into laughter. This is perfect. Absolutely perfect, sir, Martinez asked, puzzled. Don't you see? Drake said, grinning. We don't need to develop space folding technology anymore. All we have to do is wait for someone else to perfect it. Then we act like we had it all along. Martinez blinked, then slowly nodded. That's actually brilliant. Of course it is, Drake said with a wink. After all, who's going to question that we invented it first when we're the ones who planted the idea in their heads? But what do we do in the meantime? Martinez asked. Oh, that's the easy part. Drake's grin turned wicked. We're going to start taking origami classes, very publicly, and every time someone asks about space folding technology, we'll just smile mysteriously and fold paper cranes. 1 month later, at the Galactic Security Council, and so, the Arcturian representative concluded, we demand that the humans share their space folding technology in the interest of galactic peace. The human delegate, a poised woman in a crisp uniform, responded with a serene smile. Without a word, she produced a sheet of paper and began folding it with deliberate precision. What are you doing? The Arcturian sputtered, his frustration evident. Oh, just a little origami, she said casually. Would you like to learn? We offer classes classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Beginners are always welcome. The Arcturian's color-shifting skin cycled through 17 shades of annoyance before settling on a blotchy purple of restrained fury. Meanwhile, in the observation gallery, intelligence agents from 3 different species scribbled furiously as they analyzed her folding technique. Back aboard the Mobius Drake was reviewing the latest intelligence updates when Martinez strode into her ready room, holding a datapad and grinning. "You're going to love this," he said. "The hive mind just established an entire department of terrestrial paper manipulation studies. They've assigned their top scientists to study the cultural significance of fortune tellers and paper footballs. Please tell me someone got footage of hive mind researchers trying to make paper footballs," Drake replied. "Better than that, we got video. It's already gone viral on the Galactic net." Leaning back in her chair, Drake smirked. "You know what the best part is? If anyone ever figures out we were bluffing about the space folding tech, we can just point to all the progress they made trying to reverse engineer it. Then we'll say we knew this would happen all along. It'll look like we faked having impossible technology specifically to trick everyone else into developing it for us." Martinez shook his head in admiration. "That's either pure genius or absolute madness." "Why not both?" Drake said, grabbing a sheet of paper from her desk. She began folding it absent-mindedly. "After all, the greatest human skill isn't making the impossible possible. It's convincing everyone else to do it for us." "And the crane you're folding?" Martinez asked. "Oh, this," she held up the delicate paper bird. "It's just to mess with the surveillance devices that are definitely watching us right now. Wave hello to the hive mind, Commander." Somewhere in deep space, a frustrated surveillance analyst watched intently as 2 human officers spent the next 20 minutes crafting increasingly elaborate paper planes and launching them across the ready room. The analyst recorded everything meticulously. After all, it had to mean something. It always did, probably. After all, nothing humans ever did was truly that simple, right? "I must say," the Vurian ambassador declared, doing his best to maintain an air of dignity, "it appears your species has been, as humans put it, trolling the entire galaxy." Captain Alexandra Drake kept her most diplomatic poker face as she sat across from Ambassador Carell in the Mobius' diplomatic suite. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Ambassador. We've been entirely transparent about our origami research program." "Transparent?" Carell's exoskeleton shifted through several shades of frustration. "Your people have somehow convinced half the galaxy to pour enormous resources into folding objects into impossible shapes, turned papercrafts into a matter of interstellar security, and instigated 3 separate espionage incidents at Earth's craft supply stores. Not our fault Michaels had a buy-one-get-one sale on cardstock," Drake replied smoothly. "Although, I'll admit, watching hive mind operatives try to navigate coupons was educational." Before Carell could formulate a response, Commander Martinez burst into the room, looking distinctly flustered. "Captain, we've got a situation. The Arcturians, they've done it." Drake raised an eyebrow. "Done what exactly?" "They successfully folded a ship into 4-dimensional space," Martinez said, pausing dramatically. "Mostly successfully. There's still some debate about where the cargo bay ended up, but the critical systems are intact." "Probably." Carell's secondary eyes widened in disbelief. "That's impossible. You were bluffing about all of this, weren't you?" Drake glanced at the report Martinez had handed her, then back at the ambassador's increasingly incredulous expression. After a beat, she did the only thing appropriate in such a situation. She started laughing. Meanwhile, in the Arcturian Science Ministry, esteemed colleagues, Chief Researcher Val announced proudly, "We have successfully replicated what we were fairly certain was fictional human technology. The question now is, what should we do with it?" "Revolutionize space travel," one scientist suggested. "Push the boundaries of dimensional physics," offered another. Or, a junior researcher interjected, "We could use it to really mess with the humans." The room went silent as the idea sank in. "Elaborate," Val commanded, suddenly very intrigued. "Back aboard the Mobius, let me get this straight," Drake said, addressing her senior staff. "The Arcturians not only developed actual space folding technology based on our completely fabricated claims." "Correct," Martinez said with a nod. "But they're now using it exclusively for increasingly elaborate pranks?" "That's right," Lieutenant Commander Patel confirmed. "They folded an entire cruiser into what they insist is a perfect replica of a paper airplane. Then they flew it past the Sol system's outer markers, broadcasting, 'Is this what you meant?' on every frequency." Drake pinched the bridge of her nose. "I'm going to need more coffee for this. So we accidentally started an arms race that turned into an interstellar prank war?" Drake asked, her tone dry. "To be fair," her tactical officer offered, "that's probably the most human outcome imaginable. And now the hive mind is insisting we prove we had the technology first by participating in what they're calling a space space origami duel, Martinez added. They've already chosen their champion. Word is, they've been analyzing ancient Earth footage of paper airplane contests for weeks. Drake was silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face, the kind of smile that had preceded some of humanity's boldest and most ridiculous feats. Get me Earth Command, she said, and find every origami expert willing to sign an NDA. If the galaxy wants a show, we're gonna give them one they'll talk about for centuries. 3 weeks later, in neutral space, representatives from 17 species gathered to witness what would later be known as the Great Folding. The atmosphere was a mixture of anticipation, confusion, and mild existential dread as human and hive mind vessels squared off in what promised to be either a groundbreaking display of engineering or the most elaborate joke in recorded history. This will either redefine interstellar diplomacy, Ambassador Carell muttered to his aide, or go down as the pinnacle of human absurdity. Why not both? A nearby human diplomat chimed in, grinning. Some of our best work happens when we mix scientific advancement with a little fun. The hive mind vessel moved first, its shimmering hull folding and twisting into a massive, precise replica of an Earth paper crane. The ship stretched several kilometers long, its form elegant and symmetrical, bristling with plasma cannons for added intimidation. A collective gasp rippled through the observation fleet. All eyes turned to the human vessel. On the bridge of the Mobius, Captain Drake stood amidst a team of Earth's finest origami experts, who had spent the past weeks doubling as spatial folding consultants. Dr. Patel, Drake called out, is the holographic array ready? Ready as it'll ever be, Patel replied. But this is still completely insane. Of course it's insane, Drake said with a grin. We're about to convince the galaxy that folding paper is the secret to dimensional engineering. The real beauty, by the time they realize what we've done, they'll have already invented the technology we're pretending to have. Her grin widened. Let's show them what humans do best. Improvise, adapt, and make everyone question their sanity. What followed would be debated for decades. The Mobius seemed to fold itself into a sequence of increasingly complex shapes, each one more absurdly intricate than the last. Whether the display was achieved through true spatial manipulation, advanced holographic technology, or what one Vurian observer described as pure audacity rendered tangible, would remain a topic of heated discussion. The finale was the piece de resistance. The Mobius transformed into what humans would instantly recognize as a perfect paper football. With a flourish, it sailed through space, passing directly between two hive mind support vessels like a game-winning field goal. The galaxy would never be the same. In the aftermath, Martinez asked, did we just turn dimensional engineering into a competitive sport? Better, Drake replied with a sly grin. We just ensured that every major galactic power will spend the next decade trying to outdo each other developing technology we only pretended to have. And the best part? They'll be so caught up in the fun, they won't even care. And what happens when they figure out we didn't actually have the tech in the first place? Drake held up a simple paper crane, turning it thoughtfully in her hands. By then, we'll have learned enough from their research to actually build it ourselves. And since it all started with us, they'll just assume we knew it was possible all along. Martinez shook his head, equal parts amazed and amused. You know, sometimes I think humanity's greatest achievement isn't our technology or adaptability. No, Drake agreed, it's our ability to turn anything, even a galactic arms race, into a game everyone wants to play. As if on cue, an urgent message arrived from Earth Command. The Arcturians had issued a formal challenge to humanity, calling it the Extreme Multidimensional Origami Championships. Please advise on an appropriate response, the message read. P.S. Several admirals have already volunteered to serve as judges. Drake chuckled as she read the transmission. Tell them we accept, obviously. And someone get me the contact info for that origami instructor at Des Moines Community College. I have a feeling their enrollment numbers are about to skyrocket. Meanwhile, deep in the labyrinthine bureaucracy of the Galactic Security Council, a new department was being established, the Bureau of Competitive Dimensional Engineering and Paper Arts. Its first official act was to draft safety protocols for zero-gravity origami practices. The second, to ban humans from competing in the junior leagues for the sake of fairness. Welcome to the inaugural Galactic Dimensional Engineering Championships, the announcer's voice echoed across the massive space arena, broadcasting live from the neutral Epsilon sector, where species from across the galaxy have gathered to compete in what is already being called the Origami Olympics. Captain Alexandra Drake stood on the judges' platform, watching as the various competitors made their final adjustments. The Mobius floated nearby, officially designated as Earth's technical support vessel, but primarily on standby to ensure things didn't spiral out of control. I still can't believe this is happening, Martinez muttered beside her. We've somehow turned a bluff about about fake technology into the galaxy's most prestigious sporting event. The best part, Drake said quietly, is that the Arcturians just published their latest research. All this competitive folding has advanced dimensional physics by at least 2 centuries. And not one of them suspects we didn't have the technology to begin with. Oh, they suspect, Martinez said, but they can't prove it. And at this point, Drake replied with a grin, I don't think they care anymore. They're having way too much fun. The first event was about to begin, the Small Craft Transformation Division. A hive mind shuttle took an early lead, folding itself into what looked like a perfect Mobius strip, drawing gasps from the crowd. Not bad, Drake said, nodding appreciatively. But wait until they see what the Earth team has up their sleeve. The human shuttle, piloted by a former origami instructor recruited straight from Des Moines Community College, began its routine. What followed was either a marvel of dimensional engineering or the galaxy's most elaborate performance art, or possibly both. Is that shuttle doing the Macarena? Martinez asked, incredulous. With a twist, Drake replied, literally. Watch this part. The shuttle folded through a series of seemingly impossible configurations, all while maintaining a synchronized dance routine. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. In the competitors' ready room, the Earth team was prepping for the next event when an urgent message arrived from their Vurian rivals. They're accusing us of cheating, Lieutenant Park, the lead engineer, reported. Apparently, they've discovered one of our secret training facilities. The Senior Center Craft Room? Drake asked. No, the other one. The kindergarten where we've been holding advanced folding workshops. Drake said, considering. Send them an invitation to next week's session. We're doing pop-up books. Captain, I don't think. Park paused as another message came through. They're asking if there's still space in the beginner group. The competition continued with the Capital Ship Division, where moon-sized vessels attempted increasingly improbable transformations. The Arcturian entry folded itself into something resembling a traditional Japanese lantern, earning a collective gasp from the crowd. The Hive Mind's flagship took on the shape of what they claimed was a perfect human paper football, though the proportions were slightly off. Then it was Earth's turn. Are we sure about this? Martinez asked nervously as their vessel began its routine. The practice runs were unpredictable. That's half the fun, Drake said, unfazed. Besides, Dr. Patel swears there's only a 12% chance of accidentally creating a temporal paradox this time. What followed would later be described in official reports as technically groundbreaking and in unofficial whispers as absolutely bonkers. The Earth vessel folded through dimensions not previously identified, briefly took on the form of a swan made entirely of mathematical concepts, and concluded by transforming into what appeared to be a child's hand-drawn spaceship, complete with crayon marks. The judges required 3 hours and 2 new physics textbooks to calculate the score. Breaking news from the championships, the announcer's voice practically trembled with excitement. The Vurian team has just proposed a new category for next year's competition, synchronized space folding. Reports indicate they're already constructing a training facility disguised as a public library's craft corner. Back aboard the Mobius, Drake was reviewing the latest proposals for new competitive categories. Let's see, Drake scanned the latest proposals. Extreme origami parkour, 4-dimensional paper airplane distance championships, and quantum napkin folding. She glanced at Martinez. When did napkin folding become a quantum event? Tuesday, I think. The Hive Mind's research division got a little overambitious during lunch. Before Drake could respond, another urgent message arrived from Earth Command. She read it, then burst out laughing. Oh, this is priceless. Apparently, several major powers want to make dimensional engineering an official Olympic sport for the 2156 games. They're asking if we'll host the qualifiers. Where would we even hold something like that? Martinez asked. Drake's grin turned mischievous. I hear the Des Moines Community College gym is free. The award ceremony was a spectacle unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from 17 species stood proudly as medals were handed out for achievements like Most Innovative Use of Non-Euclidean Geometry and Best Interpretation of Traditional Earth Origami in 5 Dimensions. The Earth team secured several top honors, though the judges were still debating whether their final performance qualified as engineering or performance art. You know what's really impressive? Martinez said as they watched the ceremony. All this competition has led to actual breakthroughs in space travel, energy generation, and dimensional physics. Of course it has, Drake replied. Nothing inspires progress quite like the chance to win a contest, especially when it's a chance to one-up the humans who started it all. And the fact that we started it with technology we didn't actually have? Martinez asked. Ancient history, Drake said with a dismissive wave. Thanks to everyone else's research, we're actually developing it now. Sometimes the best way to achieve the impossible is to convince everyone else it's already already been done. As if to prove her point, the Arcturian team chose that moment to unveil their latest creation, a perfect fusion of origami principles and quantum mechanics that transformed their flagship into a working replica of the paper fortune teller beloved by Earth schoolchildren. The fact that it could also predict stock market trends, they claimed, was purely coincidental. Later that evening, as teams from across the galaxy celebrated what would go down in history as the first multidimensional afterparty, Drake received one last message from Earth Command. Congratulations on a successful competition. P.S. Was it necessary to teach the hive mind how to make paper airplanes? Their entire diplomatic corps is now holding distance competitions during negotiations. Drake smirked as she composed her reply. Recommend installing recycling bins in all diplomatic chambers. Also suggest adding paper airplane trajectory calculations to diplomatic training. P.S. Wait until they discover finger football. Somewhere in deep space, an Ashian science vessel was already preparing for the next year's championships. Their latest project? Folding a cruiser into a shape capable of playing rock, paper, scissors. They were certain the humans had already done it and were merely waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it. They were wrong, of course. The humans were planning something far more elaborate, something involving cat's cradle and quantum entanglement. Because why stop at folding space when you could teach the galaxy to play along? To be continued.